Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment after a breakup or a period of silence when your phone lights up and you know it's him. Maybe it's just AA. Maybe it's a memory he's throwing at you like bait. Maybe it's silence, but you can feel his presence watching from a distance. What you don't realize in that moment is that he might be planning to come back. But there's a catch. He's only going to come back if you pass the test. You see, the test began the moment he walked away. It's not written down. It's not spoken, but it's there, quietly measuring you every day. He wants to see something. He wants to see if your world stopped spinning without him. He wants to see if you're still checking your phone every 5 minutes for his name. He wants to see if, the moment he gives you the smallest breadcrumb of attention, you drop everything and run. And here's the part that might sting. This isn't about romance. This is about power. You think it's about whether he still loves you, but for him, this test is about whether he still owns you. When someone walks away, we often take their absence at face value. We assume they need space, they're confused, they're figuring things out, or maybe they just don't care enough to stay. But sometimes, that disappearance isn't about a clean break, it's about observation. It's about pulling back far enough to see what you do without them. In other words, their absence isn't really absence at all. It's a quiet presence in the background, like they're watching your life through a window they've deliberately stepped away from. They're not just gone. They're gathering data. Think about it. When someone leaves, the immediate assumption is that their story in your life is over. But for certain people, it's just a shift in tactics. They may have questions in their mind, questions they'll never ask you directly. Do you collapse without them? Do you start reaching out, chasing, trying to pull them back in? Or do you carry on, maybe hurting inside, but still showing up for yourself? The thing about this hidden agenda is that it's almost invisible. You don't know it's happening while you're living it. The test starts the second they pull away and you're unaware you've been enrolled in it. It's in the way they notice your absence on social media, in the way they hear about you from mutual friends, in the way they catch glimpses of you still going to the places you love. Even if they don't check directly, they find ways to take the temperature of your life. And they're not measuring your happiness out of kindness. They're measuring it to see if they still have a hold over you. Sometimes it's not even conscious on their part. They might not say to themselves, "I'm going to test them," but somewhere deep down, they know that if they can step away and you immediately fall apart, they hold all the cards. And that gives them the confidence that they can come back whenever they choose. This is where the power dynamic gets dangerous, because if you don't know you're being observed, you can unknowingly start performing in ways that fail the test. You can start making your life all about their return, thinking that when they see your loyalty, your longing, and your dedication, it will pull them back. But that's not how this kind of agenda works. Loyalty doesn't draw someone like this closer. It convinces them that they can have you without earning you. The hidden agenda behind their absence isn't to see if you still love them. Love, in their mind, is assumed. It's to see if you still center them in your world even when they're not there. It's about whether they've been replaced, not necessarily by another person, but by a new version of you that no longer relies on their presence to feel whole. And here's the part that's hard to swallow in these moments. Your response determines everything. If you show them through your actions, your energy, your focus, your daily choices, that your life didn't come to a grinding halt, you shift the balance. But if you let them see you frozen in place, waiting for the moment they decide to return, you give them exactly what they were hoping to confirm. That's why their absence can feel so confusing, because on the surface, it looks like distance. But underneath, it's a quiet test of your independence, your emotional stability, and your ability to continue without them. They're watching not just to see if you miss them, they're watching to see how much you've let go of yourself in their absence. The moment you realize that his so-called test isn't actually about him at all, everything shifts. On the surface, it feels like you're being measured against his desires, his standards, his needs. You imagine that the point of all this is to see if you're still the person he once wanted, if you can somehow convince him you're worth coming back for. But the truth is far deeper and far more important. The real test is about whether you've managed to hold on to yourself. It's about you, your strength, your boundaries, your ability to remain whole without needing his validation. When someone steps back, intentionally or not, they create a void. That void tempts you to fill it with thoughts of them, to rearrange your life so that you're constantly ready for their return. It can become a subtle, invisible trap where every decision you make is unconsciously filtered through the question, will this make him want me back? That's the moment you begin to lose yourself. Your priorities start to shift from living your life to performing for his potential approval. But here's the twist. When someone pulls away, the most valuable thing you can do is refuse to let that void control you. The real test isn't about whether you can lure him back. It's about whether you can stay rooted in your own value, whether you can continue to honor the boundaries that protect your emotional health. He might not say it, but what he's truly noticing isn't just whether you miss him. It's whether you've collapsed in his absence. And when you don't, when you remain grounded in your own sense of worth, that's when the dynamic changes completely. This test is not passed through longing, compliance, or sacrifice. It's passed through self-respect. It's passed through the quiet, unwavering decision to live your life at full volume regardless of whether he is in it or not. This doesn't mean you stop caring or pretend you've never had feelings. It means you refuse to make him the axis around which your world spins. In a strange way, this is where the illusion shatters. We often think that if we love hard enough, give enough, or prove ourselves enough, someone will see our worth and choose to stay. But if your value in someone's eyes depends on how much you're willing to bend yourself out of shape for them, that's not real value. That's control. And the kind of connection worth having is one where your strength is admired, not diminished. When you hold your boundaries and maintain your independence, you send a message that is far louder than anything you could say in words. I am whole without you. That's the very core of this hidden test. He may have left to see if his absence would break you, but when he sees that it hasn't, the question becomes entirely different. Instead of, will she take me back? It becomes, can I even get back in? This is why the test was never about him in the first place. It's about proving to yourself first that you will not trade your peace, your progress, or your dignity for the comfort of having someone back. And when you pass that test, something powerful happens. Whether he returns or not, you've already won. There's a part of human nature that wants reassurance of its own importance, and in relationships, especially the ones that have ended or paused, that desire can become a driving force. When he pulls away and leaves you wondering what happened, it's easy to think he's simply lost interest or needs space. But often, what's happening beneath the surface is much more calculated, even if it's not fully conscious on his part. He may be trying to find out if he still has the same hold over you that he once did. This is where the idea of power starts to replace the idea of love. It's not unusual for someone to retreat and then hover in the background, looking for signs that you still respond to them. Maybe he doesn't reach out for weeks, but then sends a small, harmless message, something vague enough that it doesn't commit him to anything, but clear enough that it stirs something in you. What he's really doing in that moment is checking the pulse. Do you still light up at the sound of his name? Do you still respond immediately? Do you still adjust your plans, your mood, even your entire day to accommodate him? If the answer is yes, then in his mind, nothing has changed. The power is still in his hands. This is why these situations can feel so emotionally exhausting. You're thinking in terms of connection, reconciliation, or closure, while he may be thinking in terms of influence. If he can see that you're still emotionally anchored to him, he knows he can come back at any point without putting in real effort. The respect and effort that fuel genuine attraction aren't necessary for him because he's confirmed you're already within reach. The way people test this power can be subtle. Sometimes it's through mutual friends. They casually ask about you or listen closely when your name comes up. Sometimes it's through social media. They post something designed to catch your attention, or they watch your stories to see what you're doing. And sometimes it's through direct contact that feels small and harmless, but is actually a carefully placed hook. The moment you respond with too much enthusiasm or too much availability, you've answered the question for them. They still matter more to you than you matter to yourself. And that's where the trap lies. When someone is seeking proof that they still have power over you, the only real way to pass the unspoken test is by not giving it to them. Not in a game-playing way, but in an authentic way that comes from genuinely reclaiming your energy and your focus. When you are busy building your life, pursuing your own happiness, and protecting your own emotional space, you naturally send the message that your center of gravity has shifted. You're no longer orbiting around him. You're standing firmly in your own space. When he realizes that his influence is no longer absolute, it changes everything. Suddenly, the choice to come back isn't his alone. You've taken that choice into your own hands. The power is no longer in whether he decides to return. It's in whether you decide to let him back in. And for someone who thought they could always step in and out of your life at will, that shift is both unsettling and magnetic. It forces him to see that if he wants to be part of your world again, he'll have to earn his place. And in that moment, the power dynamic flips. Not because you played harder to get, but because you stopped being something to get at all. Desperation has a way of stripping away the very qualities that make someone valuable in a relationship. It's natural to feel the urge to close the gap when someone you care about pulls away. You want to call, to text, to show them you're still there. The problem is, the moment you let that urgency take over, you start sending a message you don't intend to send, that you'll do anything, bend in any direction, just to have them back. And for someone who's quietly assessing whether they still have the upper hand, that's the fastest confirmation they could hope for. When you respond instantly to every message, rearrange your plans at the first sign of interest, or openly beg for clarity, you remove the mystery and the dignity that protect your self-respect. You show that no matter how much time has passed, or how you were treated before, they still have immediate access to you. It tells them they don't need to put in effort, offer explanations, or rebuild trust, because you're already leaning toward them without any of that. In their mind, there's no challenge, no earning back your presence. They already have it. What makes desperation so damaging is that it shifts the balance of value in the relationship. In a healthy connection, both people bring something to the table. Both feel they've chosen each other from a place of strength. But when desperation enters, it signals imbalance. You need them more than they need you. That imbalance erodes respect faster than almost anything else. The other person begins to feel they have nothing to lose because your attachment is guaranteed no matter how they behave. It's important to understand that withholding desperation is not about playing games. It's not about acting cold or pretending you don't care. It's about maintaining your standard and refusing to abandon yourself just to keep someone interested. There's a difference between wanting someone and needing them to validate your worth. When you cross into that territory of need, you make them the gatekeeper of your happiness, and that is power no one else should have over you. The irony is that the more desperately you chase someone, the further they often pull away. Not because they're cruel, but because desperation removes the qualities that attracted them in the first place: your independence, your self-assurance, your sense of self. People are drawn to confidence, to someone whose life has momentum with or without them. When you make another person the center of your emotional universe, you stop being the person they were once drawn to and become someone orbiting around their attention. Passing this unspoken test requires you to hold back from that impulse to prove yourself. It means letting their absence be what it is without rushing to erase it. It means continuing to live fully, even when part of you wants nothing more than to close the gap. This doesn't mean you play hard to get. It means you remain hard to lose. When they see that you haven't crumbled, that you're still moving forward, it forces them to reconsider their place in your life. You're no longer the person waiting by the phone, rearranging your existence to accommodate them. You're someone whose presence now has to be earned. And that shift in dynamic is only possible when you resist the pull of desperation and choose, instead, to stand firmly in your own value. Silence and growth have a way of speaking louder than any words you could ever send. When someone leaves, there's often an urge to fill the gap with messages, to make sure they know you still care, to remind them of what you had. But what you don't realize is that constant communication can rob you of the most powerful response you have. Showing, without a single word, that you are still thriving without them. In many cases, it's not anger or pleading that shifts a person's perception. It's the quiet, undeniable reality that you are still moving forward. Silence can be unsettling to someone who expected you to reach out. They might have assumed that the moment they disappeared, you'd start chasing. They may have counted on your inability to sit with the space they created. So when you don't rush in to fill it, you disrupt their expectations. Your lack of pursuit forces them to sit in the consequences of their own absence. It invites them to ask questions they didn't expect to ask. Why hasn't she called? Is she okay without me? Has she replaced me in her life? That uncertainty is far more impactful than anything you could try to explain. But silence alone isn't enough. If you disappear but do nothing to grow, you're just hiding. True power comes when your life is visibly progressing, when your energy, your routines, your relationships, and even your outlook show that you are investing in yourself. This isn't about pretending you're happy for the sake of appearances. It's about genuinely doing the work to become a better, stronger, more fulfilled version of yourself. Growth is magnetic because it shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, the person who left isn't sure they can keep up with who you're becoming. The combination of silence and visible growth creates a kind of gravity. You're not begging for their attention, yet they can see, or at least sense, that your life has not only continued but evolved. It's the opposite of what they expected. They might have assumed they could come back at any time and find you in the same place, waiting, still emotionally tethered. But growth shatters that assumption. It shows that their absence didn't stall your life, it propelled it. There's also a deeper psychological shift that happens here. When you focus on growing instead of chasing, you reclaim your emotional energy. You're no longer pouring it into someone else's validation. You're reinvesting it into your own goals, passions, and well-being. That energy changes how you carry yourself. People can feel it in the way you walk into a room, the way you speak, the way you hold boundaries. And whether they admit it or not, that energy can be deeply unsettling to someone who thought you'd always need them to feel whole. It's important to remember that silence is not punishment, it's protection. It gives you space to think clearly, to heal without constant interference, and to build something worth protecting. It keeps you from making reactive choices that weaken your position. And when you combine that silence with real personal growth, you send a message that doesn't just reach them, it resonates. At some point, they may look back and realize that the quiet, steady progress you made was the loudest answer you could have given, because in the absence of chasing, you proved something far more powerful, that your life is not dependent on their presence, and your worth was never theirs to measure. The real victory in these situations isn't in getting him to come back. It's in realizing you don't actually need him to. At first, that idea might feel impossible. When someone you've loved walks away, your instinct is to believe that winning means they return, that somehow their choice to come back validates your worth. But that belief hands over all your power because it ties your value to a decision that isn't yours to make. The truth is, freedom comes the moment you understand that the quality of your life does not hinge on whether he decides to be in it. This shift doesn't happen overnight. In the beginning, you might measure every day by whether he's reached out, or whether there's any sign of reconciliation. You may even find yourself rehearsing conversations in your mind, imagining how it will feel when things go back to the way they were. But slowly, if you allow yourself, you begin to see that life has continued without him, and not just continued, but offered you moments of joy, peace, and connection that have nothing to do with him at all. Those moments are the cracks where the light gets in, the proof that happiness is possible without his presence. What's powerful about this realization is that it changes the terms of the entire situation. When you don't need him back, you start looking at the relationship for what it truly was, not through the lens of longing, but through the clarity of perspective. You remember not only the good moments, but also the parts that hurt, the ways you compromised yourself, the boundaries you let slide. You begin to ask a question you couldn't have asked before. Do I even want this back? Needing someone creates a kind of blindness. It makes you overlook red flags, excuse disrespect, and accept less than you deserve because the fear of losing them outweighs your commitment to yourself. But once you step into the space where you know you'll be okay with or without them, that blindness starts to fade. You begin to see that a relationship should add to your life, not be the thing that holds it together. And if it isn't adding to your life in a meaningful, healthy way, then having it back isn't a win. It's a setback. The irony is that this very mindset, the one where you no longer need them, is often what makes someone want to come back. Independence is magnetic. Self-sufficiency is attractive. When you are no longer seeking their approval to feel whole, you present a version of yourself that is stronger, more grounded, and more selective about what you allow in your life. But by the time you reach this point, their return no longer feels like salvation. It feels like an option, one of many, and one you'll evaluate against the standards you've built for yourself. That is the true victory. Not their presence, but your ability to choose without fear. Not their interest, but your freedom to decide whether their return aligns with the life you've worked to create. It's standing in a place where their absence doesn't define you and their attention doesn't control you. And when you arrive there, you're no longer trying to pass their test. You've created a new one they'll have to pass if they want a place in your world. When someone who left decides to come back, it's easy to slip into the mindset that the power is automatically in their hands, that they get to decide whether or not the relationship starts again. But the truth is, if you've used their absence to grow, to strengthen yourself, and to rebuild your life, then the dynamic has shifted. You're no longer the person they walked away from, and that means their return isn't the final word. It's the opening question. They don't just get to choose you, they have to earn you. Setting the terms when they return isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about protecting the standards you've built in their absence. You've learned, and maybe the hard way, that giving someone unlimited access without requiring effort is a fast track to losing your own self-respect. When you've done the work to create a life that fulfills you on its own, you can no longer afford to let someone waltz back in without showing they can meet you at the level you now live at. This means you decide the pace. Just because they send a text, call, or even show up at your door doesn't mean you drop everything and let them back into the same position they once held. You control how quickly, or even if, they regain your trust. You decide what conversations need to happen before you open yourself up again. You determine the boundaries that must be respected if they want to be part of your world. And here's the crucial part. You're not doing this to play hard to get. You're doing it because you've realized that love without standards is not love. It's surrender. If they truly want to be in your life, they should be willing to match your energy, your effort, and your respect.